Hi, my name is Tracy Gossage, and I'm going to be talking to you today about one of the 7 comprehension strategies that you can use in a lesson. Specifically today, I'm going to be talking to you about the strategy of schema. So we're going to be drawing on a lot of prior and background knowledge that our students have. We are going to be making those connections. This is a kindergarten lesson, so we are specifically going to be looking at text to self connections, so things that we can connect with our students on, things in their family, foods, things in the illustrations that they may be familiar with or that they can come up with a connection to. So we're going to do a lot of discussion while we're reading this book. This is a multicultural book, but it is also a math book. So it's a book of shapes, and so that's the other reason why it's a kindergarten book, or a kindergarten lesson rather, because that is one of the Common Core standards for kindergarten is those shapes. And so this is a great cross-curriculum book, not only to look at those reading comprehension strategies to draw from schema, but to do that transfer or transition over into a math lesson or a math anchor activity and so forth. So the other thing that I would note before I get started is that while this is a multicultural book and we're going to be doing a read aloud with it, at first I thought I would probably do this as a whole group. But after reading it and really thinking about the questions and the prompts that I would ask my students, I feel like this would be best if it was done as a read aloud in a small group session. So while we might initially introduce the book as a whole group, I think that a small group setting would be better. I think that you would be able to make sure that each of your students is getting a connection, making a connection with something in the book about shapes, or the shapes of certain foods that correspond to a circle or a square or a rectangle or triangle, objects that they see every day, things that they do at home with their parents that they can remember, using a specific pot or pan for that was round or a circle. So in order to make sure that each one of my students get that connection, I feel like a small group setting would be best. Once you get through with all of your small group sessions, then you could definitely go back to a whole group to just review and make an easy transition into a anchor activity, a math lesson. So there's definitely a lot of things that you could come back together as a whole group and then move on from. But I feel like a small group setting would be best for this, just because there's so much that you can talk about and so many connections that we can make with text and illustrations. The other thing that I would note before we get started is, while this is a multicultural book, it does have a copyright of 2013, but it is also a what we would call a informational text or a factual text, because it does have some Spanish words throughout, with context clues within the sentences and the illustrations to tell us what those words are. We do have a glossary in the back of the book. And so the glossary does tell us what the Spanish word is and what the definition of it is in English. So if we can't make that connection, we can go to the glossary and look. So I would definitely want to point out that we do have a glossary in the back of the book. So I will go ahead and start reading. I will stop occasionally and probably just tell you something that I think that would be a good prompt or a question that we could ask. But we'll quickly go through this book. Round is a Tortilla, a book of shapes. It is by Roseanne Greenfield Thong. Round is a Tortilla, a book of shapes. And I would note, I'll go ahead and tell you, I was going to do this at the end, but I think I'll go ahead and tell you now what those Common Core standards are. We're going to, with prompting and support, describe the connection between two individuals, events, ideas, or pieces of information in the text. That is where your literacy reading informational text comes in. With prompting and support, we're going to ask and answer questions about unknown words in the text. That's another one of our standards for kindergarten. With prompting and support, we're going to describe the relationship between illustrations and the text in which they appear. So we're going to be looking at what person, place, thing, or idea in the text that the illustration is depicting, which you'll see we are going to be doing that. We're actively engaging in group reading activities with purpose and understanding. And then I've gone ahead and added 2 of the Common Core math standards, just because this is a math curriculum book also. I feel like it is correctly naming shapes regardless of their orientations or overall size. And then also model shapes in the world by building shapes from components and using sticks and clay balls or clay molding and drawing shapes. And so those would be the 2 math activities. Sorry about that. Okay, round is a tortilla, a book of shapes. Round are sombreros. Round is the moon. Round are the trumpets that blare out of tune. Round are campanas that chime and ring, and round are the nests where swallows sing. There are the campanas, which are the bells, and they are round. And there is the little nest with the swallows in it, and it is round also. Round are tortillas and tacos too. Round is a pot of abuela's stew. I can name more round things, can you? So this would definitely be a time where we could stop and look at all the round things. We could even talk about who we think abuela is. And talk about how if any of the children have ever cooked with their abuela. Maybe in a pot that looks just like that. Square are the letters, we know them well. Square is a board game to help us spell. Lots of squares on this page. Square are ventanas that give a view. Square is my clock and my photos too. You see you're looking out the window there at a view, and so this would be a good time to see if we could figure out based on the illustrations what ventanas actually means. Might even prompt them with if I was standing in my house and I was looking out and I saw a cow standing in the field and that was my view, or I saw a dog running across my front yard and that was a view. What might I be looking out of? And see if they can make the connection between ventanas being a window, and maybe whether or not they could make the connection that that's a big square. Maybe even the smaller squares with inside. Square is the park and the Zocala. Square is the fountain from long ago. How many square things do you know? Again, another illustration with lots of squares. Rectangles are carts with bells that chime, and cold paletas in summertime. So I wonder how many could guess what a paleta is based on that illustration. And that rectangles right here on the cart. Stone matatas inside our casa help us grind our corn for masa. We talk about corn and corn flour. In the area that I'm in, we have a lot of farmers that grow corn, so that might be a connection to a lot of our students who have dads or family members that are farmers and are growing corn. Rectangles are flags that fly above the scoreboard way up high. How many rectangles do you spy? And I'd say there'd be a lot of students that can make some connections here with the American flag being a rectangle, or even the scoreboard here and the buildings all around. Going to a game with their parents maybe, or their grandparents. Triangles are crunchy chips for guacamole and other dips. And we've got lots of chips there, tortilla chips, those triangles. Triangles sail on the breeze. They line the shore and glide on seas. And so then again, got all of those triangles. Can maybe even, this is a lighthouse over here. And we don't have any lighthouses where I'm at, but we do have some churches that have steeples on them that look a lot like triangles, so that might be a connection point there. Sandias chilled in tubs of ice. Quesadillas by the slice. Triangles can beat the heat. What other triangles can you eat? So this would be a great time to look at other triangles that we use to eat, or foods that we have that look like triangles. The first thing I think of is a slice of pizza. You can look at the watermelon here, the sandias. Can make the connection between the word and the illustrations to figure out what the sandias means. Also the quesadillas down here. Oval is my favorite locket. A special pebble in my pocket. I find ovals at the store. Huevos, olives, beans galore. Can you name a couple more? This would be an opportunity to talk about ovals. And see if we could find some more ovals in the illustration. Stars for parties, stars for light. Lining streets with colors bright. There are so many shapes wherever you go. How many more shapes do you know? And this, we would look and see what other kinds of shapes that we could find in this book and on this page of the illustrations. And then afterwards, we would come back together as a whole group, and it would be a great time to do an anchor activity. The anchor activity that I would do would be math related, and it would transition into a math lesson. So the anchor activity that I would do would be building 3D shapes out of straws and clay. So we would be doing 3D triangles and rectangles, squares, or even 2D. As long as they had the shape, using those, that would be fine. So that would be an anchor activity that we could do, and then that would lead us into our math. The item that I have here behind me would be a poster board that we would keep up in the classroom. And as you can see, I have all of the shapes that were in the book: rectangle, circle, star, oval, square, and triangle. And I have some things listed up here that would be familiar with the kids. We could do that together as a class. I've done it here just to show you, but it might be something that we would actually do as a class together, find things in the room, or maybe even look at a magazine. That could be another anchor activity, actually, that you could do. Cut pictures out of magazines that are square, circle, rectangle, triangle. But I just had like a bingo card that we would use in class as a square. I have a coin here for the circle. I have a button, a piece of round candy that would be a circle, some balls, and then of course the baseball up at the top. Stars for the star. Ladybugs, kind of oval. I thought those were cute. For a rectangle, I used a Pokemon card. Most of my kids would probably know what Pokemon was. And so that would be something that we could actually have a little triangle magnet. Here we would play with, that would maybe something that we would play with in classes, magnet building with magnets. And so this is one of our triangle magnets. Definitely would leave this up in the classroom as a reference. So if they ever needed to make any connections from maybe something that they found, then they would have those things there that would relate back to that shape. All right, thank you so much.